I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to number 11 of our top 13. Again, that's just so I can go all the way through December 31st. The way, I hate it when Christmas and New Year's hit right in the middle of the week. It just messes up. But we're going to make lemonade out of these lemons of the dates this year. And part of that is number 11, Chad Prather. And man, Chad is a funny guy, smart guy, entertaining guy. He's been through some hard times. But again, as we hear with these testimonies, God is with you in the toughest times. So I don't know where you're coming from. I don't know where you're at, but know God is with you. And it does require sort of emptying ourselves of ourselves so that we can be who God's created us to be. And that is Born for Meeting, which is the title of Chad's book, Born for Meaning. So enjoy this interview with Chad Prather.
Hey, Randy, it's good to be with you, man. Thank you for that intro. It seems like you and I have crossed paths a number of times without actually crossing paths. We know all the same people.
Yeah.
And so I've just kind of, I guess, soaked up some of your effervescent presence.
That can happen. Yeah. Most people don't enjoy it, but yeah. So congratulations.
we kind of cross-pollinate a little bit. No, I've been a big follower and fan, and just looked at your father like a father for a number of years, and your dad honored me for a while. Asking my opinion on things about social media, this crazy sociological experiment that was out there. And somehow he thought I had my finger on the pulse of it. But we had some great fellowship talking about how to get, a broader voice using these different platforms. So we had fun with that. But, the voices that are out there, there's so many, and cutting through the smoke and kind of punching through the noise these days is somewhat hard to do. But I appreciate yours, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity to spend a little time with you.
Yeah. So Born for Meaning. What's going on? Because this is a serious book, and I guess it might surprise some people.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about grief and use humor. Sometimes, unless you're the kind of person like me that laughs at a funeral or tries to make a eulogy funny. I am too. When I eulogized my late grandfather, I said he'd be disappointed in the casket because it didn't look like a bass boat. It should have had some red metal fleck in it or something like that. But to know him would be to appreciate that humor. I'm a guy that looks at the world and somewhat observationally finds humor in everything. And sometimes these days people are so thin-skinned that they're too quick to be offended, and they live in a manufactured sense of oppression, looking for something to validate their problems and victimhood. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who does, as you said, tries to look like he has everything together. But I think that's a man trait. That's one of those things that we all try to do. We're macho, self-built, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and blaze your own trail type of people. But the thing about it is God uses broken people, and he uses grief, and he uses the periods of waiting and the periods of silence and the periods of loneliness to shape people. And I'm no stranger to that. I'm 52 years old. I'm still trying to figure out who I am. People will often ask me, what exactly is it that you do? I've been fortunate enough to be able to make a living running my mouth in the last, 30 years. I graduated from college at the University of Georgia, went to seminary, and then pastored for 12 years, traveled around the world as well. And I was a great preacher. I love to say I'm a great preacher, but I was a terrible pastor because I don't understand people's sense of victimhood. And a lot of times people want to, they want to have their problems understood rather than fixed. And if you took away those problems, they wouldn't know who they are anymore. So I wasn't that great of a pastor. But I always wanted to use my ability to communicate in such a way that it was somewhat of, whether it was humor or motivation or inspiration, I wanted to give people a hook to kind of hang their hat on. And in the middle of all of that, it's hard to be the motivational guy and the inspiring guy when your life is falling apart behind the scenes. And mine literally was. Now, a lot of that was self-inflicted. We talk about grief, and oftentimes people think about tragedy and loss and what someone goes through without asking for it. I quite literally asked for it. I went into a season of rebellion and cynicism. I was angry at not necessarily God per se, but I was angry at the church. I was angry at church leaders, men who claimed to be spiritual fathers, who were really more into it for their platforms and an element of greed that was there. And I wrestled with all of that, and it pushed me into a place of real darkness and rebellion. It led me into some deep alcoholism. It led me into drug abuse. It led me into broken relationships, divorce, estrangement with, relationships with my own children that was just very, very painful. And I was going to be the guy who was going to look for reality in the bottom of everything that he could, except for the place where reality ultimately is found. And that's the truth of the kingdom of God is found in the person of Jesus Christ. And I knew the truth. The truth was always foundational for me, but it wasn't being lived out. The old meaning for the word believe is by life. You know what someone believes by their life. And if you were to look at my life and the words that were coming out of my mouth, whether I was sitting in a pickup truck or on television or radio, those things just didn't match up. And something interesting happened to me a couple of years ago. The only way I know to describe it is the Lord put his hands on my shoulders and began to press down. Not always the most comfortable situation that you can be in. And I broke one evening. I was home alone. I live alone, and I was there, and I broke into a deep, deep broken sob of regret. And just thinking to myself, what have I done? What the years that I have wasted. And that sense of brokenness came over me, and it was a long series and process of just having been broken, and the grief overwhelmed me, the sadness and the conviction that hit me. And in that moment, I cried out, and as I was asking the Lord, what is it that you're wanting from me? What do you want me to do? I felt like the Lord spoke to me and said, I made a lot of investments in you as a young man, and now I'm ready to make some withdrawals. And I thought, God, this is some interesting timing on your part. I've built a career. I'm a comedian. I tour around the country. I get to tell people funny stories. We make people laugh for a living. I put music out there, and we've done a lot of fun things. We get to have fun for a living. And now you're asking me to basically become someone that's going to expose a lot of those things by bringing the truth of the gospel to these platforms that miraculously he built. I've often said that if you want to hear about my success, you have to be comfortable with the vocabulary of the divine, because only God could have done and built what he built for me in giving me a voice to so many millions of people over the years. And so unapologetically and unashamedly, I said, I've been on this journey. Now I want to bring people along with me. And about 30 days prior to this last election, I felt impressed and just knew that politicians weren't going to be the salvation of America, but Jesus can be. And so I began 30 days of prayer leading up to the election. Then the election came and went, and the Lord impressed me to continue posting prayers on social media, which we still do. And now I've started a new podcast called Before the Noise, which is a 10-minute, 12-minute devotional every morning on my social media platforms at 7 a.m. And through all of that, the Lord began to speak to me specifically about men and specifically about grief and brokenness. And I said, I'm going to write something down. And there's a journal entry turned into a chapter, and a chapter turned into 15 chapters. And ultimately, we added some prayer direction in that as well. And it turned into this book called Born for Meaning. I wanted to write this as simply as I possibly could. I remember when John Maxwell said he wrote his first book, he knew that he didn't have that much to say, so he wrote the shortest chapters he possibly could and wrote about 26 chapters. And this book is basically that. It's a book for men to read. It's a book of one-liners, things that you can hang on the refrigerator if you need to. You can walk away from it and say, this impacted me just in one line. But ultimately, it's real, it's raw. And as I said, it's a way to take a little bit of humor, a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, and bring it to the topic of grief, but from a biblical perspective. And I think people are truly going to enjoy it. I know that I have. In the editing process, I've read it about 6 times, and it's blessed me every time.
Good. All right. Well, I'm going to get a one-liner from you here in a minute. But I totally get my method of dealing with stress, of even grief. It is to go to humor, and not everybody gets that or appreciates it. And I actually can recommend a very good course for you so you can be more sensitive to others, because I had to take one. So, I mean, I get it, but yeah, so getting out of that. But you talk about the victimhood thing. The easiest thing about victimhood is you got somebody to blame. But when you're the one to blame, you got nobody to blame but yourself, and that may be the hardest place to be, because you can't play victim, and you have to own up to some stuff. Looking back, do you know how you got to the place of brokenness? I mean, was it the success? Was it pride? Was it what? How did you get there?
I think that we can talk tough, right? We can talk tough, and we can believe that we're these big, bravado, thick-skinned people, but we're not. We really aren't. And that's one of the things that leads me to have a heart for men in these days, because men are sometimes the hardest, toughest ones to break through to. But at the end of the day, they're little boys. They're trying to find their way into masculinity and adulthood and responsibility, and they want to be good men. And sometimes they don't know how to handle brokenness. And, I say that brokenness it tends to happen about one day at a time. It builds up, it compounds, it multiplies. It's the same way healing happens. If God can bring chaos into order one day at a time, then how much more he's going to take that time to build us back as well. He's done that in me. But I don't think that necessarily we always, you don't wake up one day with this massive revelation from God and be like, wow, I am spiritually mature today. It doesn't happen. It happens over time. Well, brokenness, a lot of times, you can't put your finger on any one event that just broke you, but you can look at a pattern and you say, over this period of time, I just really got filed down to the nub. I mean, I really became down to the core essence of who I am. And I think that's where God gets you, where he can work with you. Victimhood, we live in a day and age where everybody's offended. We know that. You can't make jokes anymore. You've got cancel culture. The manufactured oppression. Everybody identifies themselves by their oppression. I often tell my audience that we live in a day and age where people really do have a lot of privilege. I mean, we live in a first world. You've been around the world. I've been around in the world. I've seen hardship. You come back to America, you realize we all really are blessed. When we have our impoverished homeless people that are suffering from obesity, we really are a blessed nation. We really are. But people tend to find their identity in their scars. You get around a group of men, they all want to talk about their war stories. They want to talk about their football feats. They want to show off their scars. And they always have to one-up one another. Well, you did that. Let me tell you about what happened to me. So we tend to do that with what's happened in our lives as well. We want to one-up one another. And since we live in such privilege and blessing, we have to come up with something that has oppressed us, because we're defined by the things that went wrong in our life. We gravitate towards the negativity, not the positivity. If you're scrolling through social media, you can go through 1,000 amens and yes and wow, that's great. And you get to that one negative troll, and that's the one you're like Velcro, you're stuck to, and you're angry and you're wanting to refute that person. That person may not even be a real person. It could be a bot that comes out of a technological bot farm in Nigeria. It may not even be a real person, but that's what your brain gravitates to. And I think that ultimately we've got to get past all of those things and realize that there's manufactured oppression, but then there's real brokenness. And I think that God does break those that he loves. He broke his only son. Yeah. And if he's going to do that to him, how much more do we need brokenness? I mean, Jesus, the perfect man, the essence of God's glory in the earth, demonstrates all of that for us in human form. How much more do we need that crucifying experience to get down to the essence of who we are, breaking through the sin and breaking through the baggage and breaking through the heaviness and the hardship? Those are the things. So I think that we've got to quit pursuing victimhood and start pursuing a true sense of brokenness. Now, nobody's going to just wake up and say, man, I want to be broken today. But there is something that if you realize there's things in our life that God doesn't want to take to heaven, like there's certain things he doesn't want to take. Like they have to be crucified. They have to be killed off. They have to be weeded out, sanctified away. It's not a fun process. That whittling, that discipline is not a fun process. But as the writer of Hebrews says in chapter 12, he said, you will yield the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been disciplined by it or trained by it. That disciplining of the Lord is a good thing. That Greek word gymnazo for discipline there is where we get our English word gymnasium. And gymnasium, the Greeks glorified the athletic body. They would literally train naked so the coach could look at them and say, okay, we've got to work on this area of your life. And that's the exposure that God's asking from all of us, is just saying, let me see you transparently, and then we'll work on those parts.
I hear you. I don't know that I can get past the naked gymnastics. That's a mental picture.
Not a good image.
No. And so I'm curious how your audience, because not everybody, started following you and watching you for prayer.
Right.
And for this kind of talk. I mean, we love the humor. We like the cutting through the political garbage and just telling it like it is. How are people responding to you?
It's an interesting thing. I wondered how that was going to be accepted. And there's different audiences on different platforms. If you go over on X, I've been fortunate enough to be in close proximity with the president numerous times. I've been in the Oval Office. I've done a lot of political humor. I've people come to expect that from me on certain platforms. I thought, how is that political savage audience over on X, which of course used to be Twitter, how are they going to respond to these prayers? Maybe I shouldn't post them there. Maybe I shouldn't draw that kind of persecution. And I felt the Lord say, no, that's exactly where you need to put them. Yep. And Randy, that's been the most positive experience. That's been the place where people, I think, are starving. That's where they're thirsty. That's where they're hungry. There is a spiritual renewal. I do believe that there is an awakening that is yet to come in this country. I think that it's happening in a lot of young people. I think more and more young people, although they're criticized, these young folks today aren't the millennials that we ridiculed for a number of years. These kids, a lot of them have a spiritual thirst and a spiritual hunger. We're seeing some eyes open on college campuses across the country. And I'll tell you, I think there's still awakening still yet to come. I think people are tired of the politics. They're tired of the empty promises, and they're trying to find something that is valid, something that is real, and that's something that makes them live for eternity. So I'm seeing some incredible responses. There have been people who have said, please put these prayers in a book form. Please share these more. They don't like it when I skip a day, because I was doing every day. Now I think I'm doing about 5 days a week, and people don't like you skipping a day. You know how it is. They become creatures of habit. So I've enjoyed the responses. It has been 99% positive across the board. This is what people want, to the point where if I make a joke about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce getting engaged to one another, people get mad at me. How dare you make a joke now?
Yeah.
And I thought, nobody, no, women have never cared if we made fun of a football player online, but not Travis Kelce. You can't touch him. He's off limits at this point.
Yeah.
So, the response has been extremely positive.
I waded into those same waters. And I'll just ask you the question I ask my friends on Facebook, which is in the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift marriage, are you taking the over or under on 2 years?
I'm taking the under on that. I'll tell you this, I'm taking the over on whether they get married within 2 years. I don't even think that's going to happen. It would upset me if I'm the Kansas City front office and this is what's distracting my tight end from an upcoming season that's about to take off in 2 weeks. That would bother me. And I'm wondering, is Travis pregnant? Has he ever read a book as long as what this prenup is about to be? I hope there's pictures in it, but you can't say things like that. People genuinely get upset with you over these things. But, listen, you got billionaires out there who, a pop princess who's made your 13-year-old sing some songs she really shouldn't be singing, and you got a guy that was advertising a Pfizer jab. So I say they're free game.
Yeah, I think so too. So, and they're on the field already. So I mean, he's out there doing it. We'll see how it goes this year. Okay, I want to show people the book again. This is Born for Meaning by Chad Prather. It's available right now. You can actually go to bornformeaning.com and get the book now, and it's interesting because not everybody gets the humor with the seriousness, but I mean, to me, good comedy makes serious points. I want to hear one of your one-liners. What's one in there that either you like or other people have liked?
Joy is not confetti and cupcakes. It's not fake smiles or plastic praise or slapping a God is good sticker on your heart while it's still bleeding. Joy is real and joy is ferocious. That's one of the things that I try to remind people, that if your happenings happen to happen happily, you'll be happy. But if your happenings happen to happen unhappily, you'll be unhappy.
That's awesome.
And so quit pursuing happiness and pursue real joy. That's one of those things. We're still here, folks. It's joy that's going to get you through, not circumstantial happiness.
Okay, so you in your subtitle you talk about unbreakable joy, and I got to ask you, you talk about relationships that mean your closest relationships, and this is a tough question. I get it.
Yeah.
But as you've been, redirecting your life and getting back to what God's called you to, relationships don't just turn on a dime overnight, and that can be hard. How do you maintain the joy even when not necessarily you haven't gotten everything back like Job did, right? There's still that loss. How do you balance those?
And they'll never come back. That's the thing about ashes. You can't glue ashes back together. It's not like the penguin in the Batman movie that got all the shredded paper and put all the receipts back together. You can't do that with ashes. They're gone. Once they're gone, they're gone. They blow away in the wind, and they just are dust at that point. But it's amazing what God can bring out of the ashes. And I've seen restored relationships, those that I mentioned earlier, an incredible relationship with my children now. I just not only gave away my oldest daughter in marriage 2 months ago, but I was able to officiate her marriage to a wonderful boy. Just fantastic young man. And I've watched my kids love the Lord. I've seen their testimony. Even with my ex, I've seen a restoration of relationship there in terms of at least friendship and being able to communicate. It's been fantastic to watch that. And so, joy, the funny thing about joy is it's one of those communicable traits. If you have joy, people catch it. People see it. If you're walking through the airport, you smile at somebody, there's a good chance they smile back. It's communicable. If you can have joy and give joy away, I believe the joy comes back to you. It's very reciprocal. And if you can be around joyful people, which is what I try to do in these days, I often say, if I'm not having fun doing it, I don't want to do it. So finding that joy out of those ashes, it really can be that phoenix that finds new life and rises up. And I encourage people to do that, even in the monotonous times of life. Search for joy. It is, as I said earlier, it is a ferocious, ferocious thing.
Yeah, and one of the killers of that you talk about in your book as well, and that's bitterness. And when you lose things, or when promises aren't kept in business, or people say terrible things about you online, some of which sometimes you find out are true. It can still make you a little bitter. What was your battle with bitterness?
Bitterness is one of those things where you've often heard it said, you're drinking the poison waiting on somebody else to die. I heard a story years ago about a guy who paid his alimony every month in nickels. And that's bitterness. That's when that starts to manifest. There's nothing more potent, especially for the Christian, for the believer. There's nothing more potent that holds them back than bitterness, resentment, and unforgiveness. And they're some of the hardest ones to let go of. I got to a point where I was angry. I was angry towards men who call themselves spiritual fathers and pastors. I was angry because I felt let down. And ultimately, it was my fault. I was the one. And I was angry at the church. I was angry at I felt jettisoned. I felt forgotten. I felt accused. I felt lied about. And all the things that, when you think about it, were the things that happened to Christ. And I'm like, who is it that you think you are to make yourself feel excused from all of these things? You're not above that. And so you realize you're in pretty good company with the saints of old and even the Lord himself. It starts to take on a perspective that you maybe aren't thinking about. And there is something about the kingdom of God, doing things God's way, that brings a peace that is beyond understanding, because, the right kingdom in place, the right government brings order, and that order brings peace. There's a reason why Jesus was called the Prince, which is government title of peace. The right government, the kingdom of God, doing things God's way, will bring you that love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and gentleness and self-control, all of those fruits that you don't come by naturally. And so those are the things when it feels good to drink that poison, if you do it God's way, when he says, bless those that persecute you, bless and do not curse, that doesn't make sense to the world's mind. But I'm telling you, what it unleashes in our lives is a power that's unfathomable.
Yeah. And, we all love the fruit. We all want the joy, the gentleness, the patience, all those good things. And if you pursue them, I don't know that it works that way, because Jesus says the only way to produce good fruit is to stay connected to the vine, and that's him, and that means living in him every day. And that's where I see you at right now, and that's a good place to be, man.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
it beats the hard work that I tried earlier.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you. Keep doing what God's called you to do, but stay connected, and you'll be good. This is really good. All right, this is the website. I'm going to show you Chad's website. You can go to the book, bornformeaning.com to get the book. This is chadprather.com. I'm showing you right here. If people want to watch you, you mentioned X, you're on YouTube. Where else can they find the show?
Sure. They can find Before the Noise at 8, 7 Central every morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, all my Facebook pages. There's a couple of them. We stream it live, and then in the afternoon, actually we're moving that. We just now moving that to 10 Central, the Chad Prather Show, which is our Monday through Thursday podcast. We talk about the headlines of the day. What I try to do on my show is I try to give a kingdom perspective. We make fun and we ridicule, don't get me wrong, but we try to give a kingdom perspective on the headlines everybody's that everybody's reading. It's easy to get lost in the chaos and the darkness and the confusion, but we try to bring some hope in all of it, and hopefully put a smile on people's face as well. So Rumble, YouTube, if they want to watch it, and of course, wherever podcasts are offered.
By the way, I do believe Chad will be one of the programmers. We were looking at some of the programs that he's got on the stream.org. So you can continue to watch even more of him as I move into an endeavor. And we end Life Today Live, but we move on to great things at the stream. So I hope you'll be a part of that. I've got some recommendations for you. If you want to hear how God has brought some people through some crazy things and some tough times, there's an interview called Saved from Suicide with Rob Decker. Also, Hillbilly Redemption with musician Jason Lovins. And then Crazy Good with Juan Martinez. And I got to tell you, his testimony is kind of crazy, but it is also really good. So check out those if you want more great testimonies. And come back tomorrow as we hit number 10 of 2025 right here on Life Today Live.